The basic way to explore the Linux file system is to use the cd, pwd, and ls commands. Cd stands for change directory and will take you to the directory you specify as argument. For example, cd/var/log will take me to the log directory that resides in var, which in turn resides in the root directory. If you get confused, just run pwd, which stands for print working directory, and it will tell you which directory you are in. The current directory is also part of the prompt. To see the contents of any directory, run ls and the directory as argument. If you run ls without any argument, it will display the contents of the current working directory. This is the contents of /var/log. To become proficient in working with the Linux file system, which by the way is extremely important for any effective system administrator, you need to deeply understand what is a path and how to use it. In my opinion, this is one of the most important concepts a beginner should learn. Unfortunately, many times it brings a lot of confusion. Take your time to exercise how to work with paths and do not go further until you master it. Let's see what is a path. A path is a unique location to a file or a directory in the file system of an operating system. In Linux, there are two types of path names: absolute and relative path names. An absolute path is defined by specifying the location of a file or directory from the root directory, which is /. It's a complete path and always starts with /. This is, for example, an absolute path because it starts with a /. To write an absolute path, start at the root directory and go deep into the file system, writing a / after every directory name. Linux uses forward slashes to separate directory names and does not use backslashes like Windows does. Let's see some examples of absolute paths. This is an absolute path, another one. They are absolute because they start with a /. Use the tab key for auto-completion. This will help you save a lot of time and also prevent you from making mistakes. Or cd/home, student, and desktop, written with capital D. This is the desktop directory. It's similar to ~/desktop. It's the same. Remember that tilde means the user's home directory. So /home/student. And by the way, in Linux, the desktop directory is called desktop, written with a capital D, and is located in the user's home directory. I'm creating a new folder on the desktop using the graphical interface and then displaying it in the terminal. It was created. The folder is on my desktop, and I'm displaying it using the ls command. It's there. Let's move on and see another absolute path. /var/log/boot.log. I'm displaying the last lines of a file as root. Let's go ahead and see what is a relative path. A relative path is defined as the path related to the current working directory. It begins at your current directory and never starts with a /. Before going on with the relative paths, let's understand the special meanings of single dot and double dot used in a relative path. Simply put, a simple dot represents the directory you are in, and two successive dots or double dot represents the parent directory. On a Linux system, these items are automatically created in every directory and can be seen by using the ls command with the -a option. -c means show hidden files as well, and any file or directory that starts with a dot is hidden. For example, ls-la. I have displayed the contents of the current working directory, my desktop, and we see there the current directory, the single dot, the parent directory, double dot, or tilde, this is tilde, the user's home directory, and folder 1, the directory I've just created. ls-a tilde, I'm listing the contents of tilde, the user's home directory. And we see there both the dot and double dot. Using a single or double dot, we can build the relative path to any file or directory from the current working directory. Let's try some examples. I'm moving to /etc directory. I've used an absolute path. I'm printing the current working directory by running pwd. And it's showing as being /etc. If I want to see the contents of a file named hosts in the current working directory, I'll simply run cat or other command used for displaying files and the name of the file, like cat hosts. This is a relative path that uses the current working directory as reference. It doesn't start with a /. Another way to use a relative path to the same file would be cat./hosts. It's the same. Note that I've used a dot character to represent the current working directory, which is the default anyway, and the / is the directory separator. In other words, what I'm saying is print at console the contents of the hosts file, which resides in the current working directory, in the single dot directory. The same command using an absolute path would be cat/etc/hosts. Next, I want to see the contents of cron.daily directory using a relative path, and the command is ls cron.daily. The same command using an absolute path would be ls/etc/cron.daily. Now, I want to display the logrotate file which resides in cron.daily using a relative path, and I'm running cat cron.daily, a /, the directory separator, and the name of the file, logrotate. And the same command using an absolute path would be cat/etc cron.daily logrotate. This is an absolute path. Let's see some more difficult examples. I'm moving to my home directory using an absolute path. I could have moved to the same directory by running cd without any argument, or by running cd and tilde. In Linux, tilde represents the home directory of the current user. Keep this in mind because it's important. From that directory, I want to list the contents of the home directory using a relative path. As I said earlier, two successive dots or double dot represents the parent directory, which is /home. So to see its contents, I run ls and double dot. This is the contents of /home, the parent directory. Now, if I want to see the contents of the root directory, I run ls double dot /double dot. This is the contents of the root directory of /. I'm moving up 2 levels. And a really complicated one. Let's display the contents of logrotate, which resides in /etc/cron.daily using a relative path. So cat, this is the home directory, this is the / directory, etc, cron.daily, and the file, logrotate. You notice how the relative path has changed according to the current working directory. The absolute path to that directory always remains the same. This is the absolute path. Maybe you wonder if there's any difference between an absolute and a relative path, or when to use each of them. My answer is that there's no difference. When you have to do something like remove a file or create a new directory, it doesn't matter if you are using an absolute or a relative path. It's more like a matter of convenience. If you are already in /etc cron.daily, it's more convenient to refer to log rotate using a relative path than an absolute one. It's easier to refer to the file this way than this way. On the other hand, an absolute path is more reliable than a relative one. I cannot say move to cron.daily directory by typing cd cron.daily. This is a mistake. This path is a correct one only if the current directory is /etc. If the user is in any other directory, that path will be wrong. It's correct only if the user is in the /etc directory. Another nice command you can use to get used to paths is tree. Tree is a recursive directory listing tool that helps you see easier and clearer the parent and children directories. Unfortunately, tree is not installed by default on Ubuntu. Let's install it quickly. Sudo apt install tree. It was successfully installed. If you run it with no arguments, it will display the contents of the working directory recursively, showing subdirectories and files in tree-like format. When a directory is given as argument, tree lists all the files and directories found in that given directory. Tree/etc. It's listing all the files and directories that reside in /etc. Upon completion of listing all files and directories, tree returns the total number of files and directories listed. Some useful options are -d to print out only the directories and -f to print out the absolute path for each file and directory. It's printing only the directories. It's printing only the directories and an absolute path, and it's printing both the files and directories using an absolute path. At the end, I want to stress again the importance of relative and absolute paths. Practice as much as possible and don't go ahead with the course without a very good understanding of how to use paths in Linux.